Hello, and welcome to Season 6 of Beyond Teaching, a podcast from the Psych Sessions Network. I'm Eric Landrum from Boise State University, one of Beyond Teaching's 3 co-hosts. My other 2 co-hosts are Susan Nolan from Seton Hall University and Adeyinka Ikinsular-Smith from the City College of New York. These 4 episodes of Season 6 were recorded from March of 2023 through July of 2023, and they are dropped for a special Leap Day release on February 29th, 2024. In some ways, this is a mini-season with 4 episodes to present. Episode 1 features 2 international doctoral students at the time of the recording, and this episode is amazing. It's where I learned about deficit-based cultures and strengths-based cultures. In episode 2, Yinka, Susan, and I discuss email etiquette, which appears to be an ongoing challenge for many folks in higher education. In episode 3, Susan and I get a chance to discuss leadership transitions in one's career, addressing the joys as well as the drawbacks. We closed the Leap Day mini-session release with episode 4, where Susan and I welcome special guest Sue France. We get a chance to discuss multiple recent transitions for Sue, as well as new challenges. It's all part of the knowledge and skills that psychology professionals need to know about. The stuff that we were not taught in graduate school. That is, beyond teaching. Welcome to Season 6.
Hello, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Beyond Teaching. We're thrilled to be with you here today. We come through in the thick and thin, through rain, sleet, snow, and technical difficulties. You'll hear us all in one way, shape, or form. I am Eric Landrum from Boise State University.
Hello, friends. This is Yinka Ikinsular-Smith from the City College of New York, New York.
And Susan Nolan from Seton Hall University in New Jersey. And today, a couple months ago, I read an article in the New York Times by Adam Grant talking about emails and the sort of feeling of urgency that people often have. In fact, there was a study that showed that if people email after hours, the recipient sometimes feels like there's an urgency to reply, that it's a more important email. And in one of his pieces of advice was to include in your email, no rush or not urgent or whatever. And I was living abroad for a while. And while I was working on my own time and emailing people. And there was one time when I got a response that was pretty snippy to an email. It wasn't an academic. It was related to something work, but not in academia, just to keep it. But the response was very snippy. Well, I will respond to you at 8:00 on a Thursday night because I happen to be on email, and for me, it was the middle of the workday, which I then explained. I also have a couple of colleagues who work at weird hours because of childcare in the afternoons. They might work in the evening, or they manage their life by working at these times. So I guess my question for the two of you is, what etiquette do you think we should have so that people don't feel burdened by our emails? And what responsibility do I have, if any, to think about what time zone my recipient is in and accommodate that? To me, I felt like I should just work when I'm working, but maybe I'm wrong. So over to you two.
So this is Yinka. I'm calling in by phone today because of technical difficulties, so I can't see the others. So I might trip over them when I'm responding or saying something. But, for me, this is the clinician in me. It's like, why do people feel that they have to respond right away? I think sometimes we put on that internal pressure ourselves. So if someone sends an email, and do I have to respond right away? Am I obligated to? I mean, I get all kinds of emails from people, at ridiculous hours, Sunday, Saturday, weekend, late night Fridays. And I actually have been working with myself to try not to feel obligated to respond immediately. And to kind of add to what you're saying, Susan, I'm on sabbatical. So I have a note that says, sorry, things will be delayed. But as you all well know, sometimes not only do things get delayed coming from me, but they get lost in the shuffle. So what I've taken to telling, students and some colleagues or professionals, if you don't hear from me, email me again, but I'm not necessarily going to jump up and respond right away if I'm not in a position where I can.
So, Susan, I think it's a great issue that you've brought for our Beyond Teaching podcast. Like, I think there's a host of variables that influence this. I think it depends on where you are in your career, where you are in your institution, your leadership level. I think there's a lot of variables that influence this. While you were talking, I looked up. Uh, I have an associate dean friend, and she's terrific here at Boise State. And at the end of her signature block on her emails, she says this: "I will sometimes send emails out of hours: I do not expect others. I do not expect others to do so." So I think there's one
Mhm.
thing to actually set expectations in writing in our emails. I'm about to end 4 years of service as department chair, and I'll just stop and say woot woot right there. First off,
Woot woot.
secondly,
Whoop, whoop.
I purposely, there's a very small staff, and I hesitate to call it staff. It's really more of a team, a departmental leadership team. And during those 4 years, I very purposely tried not to send emails on Saturday and Sunday, only because I felt that our leadership team might also feel like they need to be on email and reply on the weekend. So if I took Saturday and Sunday off from email, I could model a behavior where my team could have a real weekend. So, however, depending on one's position, if you're a provost, if you're a college president, you're probably answering email 24/7. You don't have that luxury. And sometimes people just feel like answering email in the middle of the night, and they should. But I do think, unless there's some hard deadline, why should someone feel like they have to reply right away?
And what do you think about the international issue? Increasingly, many of us are working with people in other time zones. And so working hours might not match up. And to what degree, it might not even be possible. For example, if I'm sending an email to a group that are in like 8 different time zones, there's no one time that everybody would be working. So I felt kind of frustrated by the one response that I got that
Yeah,
expected me to.
I think you're
Yeah, and
justified feeling frustrated. What again? Unless I don't think it's about the only frustration I can imagine is if people are sending email responses 3 minutes before a group deadline for like a task force report.
Right.
That's not about the time zone. That's about the lack of timing, collaboration,
Absolutely.
cooperation.
And I just want to also add that, with the way the technology is, you can be anywhere in the world in any different time zone working, and nobody would know where you are in the world.
Right.
So, yeah, you can't always match.
Well, I'm going to gently. I agree with the last part for sure. You can't always match, nor does it matter. But technically, you could probably go into the details of the email, and unless you're hiding your location, you can probably see the location. I mean, if you go in the nitty gritty details of how emails are sent, you can usually find the IP address, and the IP address has location stuff.
But who's
I
going to
don't
do that?
I don't do that,
Who
nor do I
has time
care.
to do that? Like, who has time to
Yeah.
do that?
Right,
And
but
also-
I'm just saying, technically speaking, for the 3 geeks who listen to our podcast, you probably can figure out the location. But but I agree with you holistically. I don't think it matters. The quality of the work matters more than when someone is doing their
Right.
part. It's kind of like students who do their work right before a deadline. So do most faculty members, no matter where they are in the world. And time zones, I mean, kind of are irrelevant other than
Right.
making sure you can keep track of them.
Yeah, the anecdote that I used was not something that was urgent. I responded to an email and answered some questions and asked some questions for something that wasn't due for weeks. So that was not the sense. I also at one point when I was working overseas, just thought, should I be adjusting, the send times so that if I'm writing to someone back in the US, it's coming tomorrow. But that takes 30 seconds
Yeah.
to a minute. And to do that on every email is just
I think
not
it's too much
possible.
work. It's just overthinking. I think it's too much.
Well, and
You know,
there are tools. I mean, there's tools built into. I'm not a Outlook user. I'm sure there's there. Gmail has a tool, a delayed send. I use Boomerang, but again, Susan, if it's your dean or your provost telling you that, you might take the time to do the delayed send so it gets to
Sure.
their inbox at the time that they want. If it's some publisher's rep asking you to answer a question about your next upcoming book, and it's not time sensitive, you might just blow them off. Depending on who you're replying to and their level of authority and control over your life, you might comply to their request.
Right. Yeah, it was not it was not that kind of situation. And that wasn't the only time. There were just several times when I had to be like, I'm in Australia. I'm sorry that, I'm on opposite time. I thought about the Outlook or the Boomerang. I use both of those tools. But you can't do it for every email. You think about how many emails you send in a day. It's just there's
Yeah.
not enough time to do that for every email.
And it shouldn't matter. I mean, once you said I'm in Australia, that should have been the end of the explanation. I mean, if they're curious, why are you sending me emails at 3 a.m.?
Right.
Well, it was because I was plus 17 and the next day, and I'm ahead of you, and I was up early. Plus we have colleagues here in the US. I, you know, I think I've gotten more than one email from Jane Hallinan, our beloved friend, at 3 o'clock in the morning, and she's in Pensacola, Florida. So, some of our colleagues work at weird times, or they do a delayed send because they wrote it
Yeah.
and they didn't want to deliver it right away. I mean, I'm sorry you got hassled about it.
I also think the pandemic led to a shift for a lot of people
Yeah.
in their working hours
expectation.
and the flexibility to, and I'll do that sometimes if I have, I don't know, a doctor's appointment or something, and I'm off doing that. I don't get home till 1 in the afternoon. Then I'm going to be working well into the evening to make up for that. And I love that our jobs have that flexibility. And yeah,
But I think there's something else. I think there's two things here. I agree with you that the pandemic kind of triggered a shift in, I think most people took agency in their flexibility. But what is the point of announcing you've offended me by sending me an email out of pocket hours? That's a whole different thing. I agree. People should work when they're comfortable working, when they have that ability, and they should know when they have to reply critically and quickly and when not. That's a skill set. They have to navigate in their own local context. But they don't need to be upset about I go to bed at 10:30 and you emailed me at 10:31. How dare you, you brute? That part of it is a
Yeah.
different level. That's just looking for something to be offended by, which doesn't make it that and that might have been enhanced by the pandemic as well.
yeah.
But that is an artificial thing to be upset about, in my opinion.
And then the other thing too, because your dean's message at the end, I've seen other people do that. And I think it's lovely. I don't know, it doesn't feel like my personality to say to somebody, you know, um, you should work, whatever. I don't know. It just feels weird to almost be telling them what to do in a way. Like
Well, I
I work outside of hours and you shouldn't have to. It almost feels like I'm being like, I'm working outside of hours. And
But the
you don't have
volume of emails that my associate dean sends, I appreciate her sending that because
yeah.
I don't
Okay.
want to have to. I agree. It's not my cup of tea as well. Um, but I do delayed send all the time because if I'm answering an email to a student, we all know that students will oftentimes email right back
Yeah. Like it's
after
text.
because they think we're online.
Yeah.
And they want to have a conversation with us.
Yeah.
They want to go back and forth. And so I'll write the email and send it and delay it 4 hours so that I know I won't be in front of email. So that when they do reply 4 hours and 1 minute later, I won't be in front of my computer answering email, yet I will have sent it, got it out of my inbox and felt better about getting something done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good use of the delay.
Yeah, I don't really use the delay at all. I just, when I can get to them, I get to them and I email. And when I can't, I can't. And actually on my syllabi, when I'm not on sabbatical on my syllabi, I have a thing there that says, I, work these hours to these hours. And I mean, this is for students. I will do my best to respond within, I don't know, 24, 48 hours, but I will do the best I can. I cannot be, nor do I want to be held hostage to being on the computer or, I have colleagues who have taken themselves their work emails off their phone simply because they don't want this pressure feeling of having to respond right away.
Oh, that's me, Yinka. That's me. I don't have my work email on my phone, so I can only check my work email on my laptop.
I haven't quite done that yet, but it's just like the expectation. And I also do think that too, that the pandemic fed into that a little bit, that people, you're sitting around your home. What else do you have to do except respond to emails and text messages and WhatsApp messages and all the other things? And then when you have more than one email, if you're working in other places, like for example, I have 3 professional emails, and it's just like, it's a lot to try to keep on top of all of them. What I'm on sabbatical for, that's clear. And the others, I just try to get to when I get to and not be held again hostage.
And that's how I feel too, Yinka. I actually have in my syllabus as well that I sometimes will email in the evenings on the weekends, but they shouldn't expect it. And they should expect a response within, I say 24 hours on working days. But then I just do my best. And sometimes I do catch up in the evening because it'll make me feel more relaxed for the next day. And same sometimes on a Saturday. But yeah, to me, it's more stressful. I started feeling stressed when I was in Australia, thinking about all the emails I was sending outside of people's work hours when, that was where this came from. And then I read Adam Grant's article in the New York Times, and it really spoke to me. And he also talked in it about women feeling that urgency sometimes more than men. Women are, we're socialized to some degree to, be responsive, and of course, lots of individual differences. But that was something he mentioned in the article as well.
Adam Grant also talked about in that article how women tend to mention their sabbaticals over and over again in a podcast.
Do I hear some haterade? Do I hear some haterade?
I just wonder, no, but something that both of you have mentioned that I want our listeners to pick up on is some really, really clever and useful, for lack of a better term, I'll call it hedging language. And so rather than promising, I will answer emails within 48 hours, I think you heard Yinka say, my goal is to answer emails within 24 to 48 hours. And that's a really good syllabus tip, because I think newer faculty oftentimes tend to trap themselves, even with a syllabus statement saying, I will respond to all emails within 48 hours. And then something in your life happens, right? Then there's a crisis. Then it could be a good crisis. A baby is born, or a bad crisis. A family member dies. And all of a sudden, the student sees in the syllabus, you promised 48 hours, and at hour 49, I didn't get a reply to my email about the 5-point quiz. And I think as we get later into our careers, we figure out that we give ourselves some hedges, some out clauses, if you will, and saying, my goal is to return an assignment within 2 weeks, or my goal is to answer an email within 48 hours, allowing ourselves life events happen and we get busy, or we're just not in the mood to answer an email because I might be more snippy than I want to be, and I'm just going to wait an extra day.
There was one more thing that Adam Grant said in the article, that he hates it when he doesn't respond and somebody sends an email saying, just bumping this up in your inbox. And he said that makes him bump it lower in his inbox because he finds, I don't know. On the other hand, I tell my students, if you don't hear from me within, expect within 24 hours. If you don't hear from me in a couple days, please do bump it up in my inbox because things get lost. So where do you two fall on the bump?
Yeah. Well, I've said to people during the sabbatical that it's one of the things that I have been much looser about is checking my emails and responding all the time. So I've said to people, if they don't hear from me in a timely fashion, please, poke me, send me another email. And just in case, because I do try to get to them, but sometimes ones, as you all well know, slip through my fingers.
I think that can work. First off, I don't do that, but I think it can work, but you have to operationally define for your audience what timely means.
Yeah.
I think Susan said 24 hours, but I think for some people, does that mean give them, if you don't be back within a week?
I say I expect a response within 24 hours, but if you don't hear from me within a couple of days, so I don't say wait till the 25th hour. And I found that students don't abuse it, probably because most of the time I do manage to get to it. And also if I ever bump something up in someone's inbox, I don't say just bumping this up in your inbox because I'll just say I hadn't heard from you and we're submitting this abstract and we really want to make sure you get a chance to give your input or something like that.
No, and there's a really cool tool. It's in this Boomerang suite that I use within Gmail that says, if I send something to Susan Nolan and she doesn't reply to me within X days, and I can define that, bring that email back into my inbox so that I know that it reminds me that she hasn't replied yet. It doesn't send a reminder to her. It brings it back into and it'll come to the top of my email inbox because it's a new email as a reminder. And then I can decide, do I now send her a bump or do I text her or do I go, okay, I'm going to give her a couple more days. I know that she's submitting 3 abstracts to ACT and I know we already talked and I know she's working on it. And so I think there's other ways to do that. I think post-COVID, the students that I see are more antsy. And I will say that I taught intro psych last semester for the first time in 13 years, and they were really anxious about getting feedback on assignments. I think I'm going to teach a 400 level class and intro this coming fall 2023. I think my upper division senior psych majors will be more relaxed because they know me, they know about me. But my intro freshman students, they don't know me from Jack. So I think they have more anxiety, grades and contact and feedback.
I think I really appreciate all the ideas. I think I've gotten some good tips. I have used that Google device previously and not enough. I love that. So thank you for reminding me, Eric. I also really like your language, Yinka, about my goal as opposed to like you can expect or I will. So those are 2 things I'm going to try to use, and also maybe just not stress as much about other people's reactions to when I send an email.
Other people are lucky to be getting a response from Dr. Susan.
Yeah.
They should just be happy that they're hearing back from that award-winning teacher, researcher, textbook author.
Sure.
They could be happy with that. Otherwise, shut the F up.
Mr. Dr. Famous Eric Landrum.
Well,
but no, I really appreciate this conversation. And thank you.
You bet.